Hello and welcome to Football Digester, a brand new show in which we talk about what's happening in the world of football. My name is Yvonne Mangunda and I am also rolling with two analysts in the studio. And I'll start with Philip Zulu. Philip Zulu is a junior football development coach based in the UK and has worked with so many clubs, including Leeds. I mean, when I heard Leeds, I was like, how does one get to Leeds? How did that start, Philip?
Well, it just started out as a passion, I was coaching youngsters in the community, and the next thing is our performances were so impressive, and Leeds United came along. They said, we're happy with what you're doing in the community and we want to make you one of our scouts. So you scout specifically mostly the African communities.
Wow, exciting. So we want to hear his insight. I mean, how many times would you say we've got somebody from the UK who's worked with brands like Leeds, and you'd want to hear his take on the Zimbabwean football landscape. And also in the studio, I've got Francis Nyamutsamba. You know him, local journalist and also an accredited performance analyst. Francis, not because Francis, this weekend, I sort of got to that point where I said, this is done. But maybe it's the Mets. We can't declare them now as the winners. But do you see anyone stopping FC Platinum with 5 games to go, leading by 10 points?
Definitely not. You look at the form that they've been in, winning their last 4 matches. The game before that, they had drawn against Ngezi Platinum Stars, and now they're just on a roll. 4 matches in a row and just needing 6 points from their next 5 games. Who's going to stop them? I mean, Chicken Inn have already considered that it's for FC Platinum to lose. I don't see anyone stopping them. I think Norman Mapeza has been doing a really good job with FC Platinum.
In France, they're talking about the tweet that Chicken Inn posted after FC Platinum won on Sunday, where they said, congratulations to the best team in the land. Philip, when you get to a point where your opponents start saying, you're the best in the land.
I think they have to admit, if you look at the structured Platinum FC, if you look at the continuity that they've had, some of these teams during the COVID era, they didn't play, whereas Platinum were playing in the Champions League games. So they have a good structure, they're well resourced, they have good facilities, they're well financed. So it's a big plus for Platinum and also for local football.
But they must be doing a whole lot more besides just the finances, because you've experienced football on the other side of the ocean. Because when you talk about being financed, Ngezi Platinum is well financed. Dynamos right now have got a sponsor. Islanders have a sponsor. Manica Diamonds have. There's so many teams. Chicken Inn that we talk about. What makes FC Platinum different? What's the other thing that you need to have on top of just being financially stable?
Yeah, in terms of football progress, this is what we call football progress. You have to look at the structure that is continuously evolving. This is what is happening to FC Platinum, because they've been in the Champions League, they've been in the Mandela tournament in Africa as well. So that's continuity. But on the same note, they also have a lot of their players playing in the national team, and also, Norman is a good coach. They're doing so well. It adds up, to have a good complement like that.
Yvonne, I think it's been a really impressive turnaround. They did not have the best of starts. Many people were saying, this time Norman Mapeza got partied. But the way they've just managed to turn around things and get things going, we've alluded to the fact that the last 4 games they have won, and then currently they've got a points tally of 64 points. 64 points, and then you look at when they won their last league title, they won it with 62 points. So it really just goes to show that this time around they mean business, and the way they've just blended in the young players. I remember early on in the season when their club spokesperson was talking about the club having a change in mindset, now focusing on the younger players. Remember, they lost big players, the likes of Silas Ongani going away, the likes of Calvin Madzongwe, but still it hasn't really shown in the way they've performed.
And I see you're wearing your Real Betis colours, and I want to ask you that question to say, we've seen FC Platinum also investing in the administrative side, having a partnership with the Real Betis, even going to Spain to see how things are done. How important is that to learn from other teams that are on a bigger platform?
It's very, very important, because if you look at most of the clubs in Zimbabwe at the moment, the underdevelopment is not just at a national level, it's also at club level. Most clubs are not investing time and resources, and that kind of acumenship to say, what else can we do better than what we've done maybe the last 30 years, the last 40 years. This is the biggest problem of Zimbabwean football, underdevelopment within club level and within the national level. There's a lot of it. So going abroad, going out, it opens everybody's mindset. I had a good opportunity in England where I had almost 20 years of learning the game. I learned the game in England, I learned the game in Germany, I learned the game in Central Europe. I go different places, Cyprus, Eastern Europe, I always learn the game every day. This is what we don't do in Zimbabwe. We don't learn the game. We want to preach the game of yesterday.
Definitely talking about the games of yesterday, and talking about a team that has been in the league for the longest time. Highlanders losing to FC Platinum by 3-2 at Bowerfield Stadium, as well as the game between Dynamos and Manica Diamonds. Dynamos winning that one 1-0 away from home, as well as the game between Chickenine and Bulawayo Chiefs. Chickenine as well winning that Bulawayo derby by 3-0. And when you look at this, for me, my prediction before the start of the match day, Francis, I thought FC Platinum will have a difficult time at Bowerfield Stadium against Highlanders. Those matches have always been really like a grudge match, and most times we've even seen incidences of violence. And then I looked at, Dynamos traveling to Manica Diamonds, considering what has been happening lately. I thought they're not going to win. And then Chickenine, to me, seemed like they had the easier assignment. But when you look at FC Platinum, they seem to be able to get the results against the smaller teams as well as the big teams, which is what, if you want to win the title, you have to do.
I think it just goes to show the character within the FC Platinum side. At one stage it was 2-2, and it was right at the death, and then Walter Musona exhibiting some experience, scoring that late winner. So I think being able to grind such a result. Bowerfield Stadium is not an easy stadium to play at, especially when Highlanders are at home. So I think it just goes to show that FC Platinum is a side that has plenty of character.
And talking about other fixtures, Black Rhinos losing 2-1 to Harare City. Herentals 1-0 victors over Cranbourne Bullets. Wawa 1-0, Bulawayo Chiefs 2. And I'm assuming next week we have to talk about the relegation, because surprise, teams like Caps United in the mix. Harare City seem like they've sunk. They seem like they're going again. The last time they were relegated, found themselves back, but this time around things are not working, Francis.
Interesting relegation battle. Yeah, I know that Caps United fans were relieved with that 2-1 victory over Triangle, considering the fact that they were trailing 1-0, but managed to turn around things. So good to see that Caps United were able to grab maximum points. Remember previously, my supporter akataura kuti tikuda kuona coach Chitembwe, and they had a chat with the coach, airing out their grievances, but it was good to see that Caps United were able to get that crucial win that takes them a bit up in terms of the relegation waters. But Harare City, things are not really, definitely not looking good at Harare City.
We talk about the relegation, and we also have to talk about the teams that are coming from the divisions. Remember, 4 teams get relegated, 4 come. And from the Central region, we've got Shesham. We also have Southern region, Wangea coming back into the Premier League, Green Fuel from the Eastern region. And then we've got, this one was a tough one, because they had bigger competition from, Golden Eagles, but Simba Bora back, Simba Bora coming into the league for the first time. And Francis, Simba Bora, the fans, you sort of feel they're teams that you don't support. But when you've been to watch their matches, you're like, I hope they get into the league, because the support base is on another level.
They have a very huge support base. You look at when they're towards the nice stadiums, the fans come in their numbers. Not only do they come in their numbers when they're towards a nice stadium. Remember the game, I saw you, Ivana, the game versus Golden Eagles, the number of fans that were rooting behind Simba Bora. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure it's going to bring a different atmosphere And before we went on air, I was talking to my brother Philip here. We were talking about the significance of community-driven teams. This is a team from Shamba. Shamba arikuti ndo team yedu. Hence, they'll be able to get a bigger fan base, similar to what happens in England. Leeds, and what supporter Leeds. Manchester is split, of course. Man United, Man City, and yeah.
I think when you talk about that, I remember growing up. I grew up in Vuri. I was born in Karoi, grew up in Vuri, but when I started watching football was in Vuri. And we're in Division 2, but we would always make sure that we went to watch that team. So I can imagine if that team got into the Premier Soccer League, how important is that support base? Because we've seen teams like FC Platinum, they came, and Zhishavani, they've struggled because Zhishavani was predominantly Shabani Mine, still stays predominantly Shabani Mine, despite the fact that FC Platinum have been doing amazing.
Football is community based. That's a fact for life. It's community based. But what has happened in our local football for a very long time is that the shift in terms of the patterns of support, based mainly in the way people see, especially the European football. So people tend to think local football is not doing so well. Maybe let me stick to Man United and stuff like that. But these are some of the issues that local football has got to try and resolve. Local football has got to look at themselves in the mirror and start to say, look, we are Simba Bora. Yeah, as Simba Bora, let us bring that entertainment of quality football in Shamba. That makes a big difference. It draws everybody together, and it grows the community as well. The scales of economies that are found in football, the local guys start to feel, can I play for Simba Bora? Can I play for the Zimbabwean national team? Can I go and play abroad? So it brings that connectivity in terms of everything that you expect in football.
But do you think, we talk about FC Platinum, Francis, and one of the reasons cited by some of the fans in Zhishavani was the fact that when they came into the league, they started buying players outside. Meanwhile, if you're a Shabani Mine supporter, the chances of a Zhishavani boy playing for Shabani Mine are higher than playing for FC Platinum. How important is that, getting kids from the community? And is it supposed to be a must in case maybe the talent isn't up to the grade that you want?
I think that's where the aspect of grassroots development comes in. Because if you have your structures, say from under 12, under 15, under 17, under 19, then you have kids from within the community being developed from a very young age. First team. So at the point at which FC Platinum got into the league, I think Pampasat those structures could my players from under 12, under 13, 15, 17, 19. So it's something that would have taken a bit of time. So rightfully, my supporter got out, no, they would identify more with Shabani in mind based on the fact that Shabani would be fielding players from within that Zhishavani community.
And before we move on to other topics, you're a junior development coach. When you come back to Zimbabwe, how do you feel about development in Zimbabwe? Because you'll see, like he's saying now, you've got a team like FC Platinum, maybe an under-19 team in the lower divisions, Ngezi Platinum, the same thing. But it's not all the teams that are doing the same thing. Most times, teams are focused on results. So they've no time to be trying youngsters. They want the tried and trusted. Like we talk about, even when I went to watch Simba Bora and Golden Eagles, you then realize the bulk of the players are those players that were in the Premier League, no longer make the grade, or maybe they didn't get deals. Now they're now going to Division 1. What then happens to the youngsters that are supposed to be in those feeder Division 1 teams?
This is the biggest issue in local football. Local football, like I said earlier on, it's underdeveloped. Whether it's club level or at national team level, it's underdeveloped. So underdevelopment, it takes away that kind of assimilation of taking a youngster since he's 8 up to the age of 18 in the structures of a local community club. That has been taken away. But clubs have got to go back and say, we are Dynamos. We want an under 10 Dynamos team. Yeah, We are Caps United. Fortunately, I had an opportunity to go and work with Lloyd Chitempo at Caps United, the first team. I was coaching with him for the first 4 weeks when I came from Europe. This is the main issue I tried to address with Lloyd and Charlie Jones and everybody. I said, yeah, but I'm a product of Caps United under 16s. I played for them as a junior. I don't see under 16 Caps United. I don't see under 12 Caps United. I see Caps United first team only. You know, the same with Dynamos. You only see 2 levels. You only see the development side, and you only see the first team. You know, this is shortchanging the club development programs. You have to have an under 10, under 12, under 14, under 16. Then that's like an academy. Then after that, you have the youth teams that will take up most of the development. You know, that feeds into the first team. But what you have in the development, 24-year-olds players, 26-year, it's a big mix.
And I think, Yvonne, we should also give credit to Ngezi Platinum, how Benjani came in and started introducing some youngsters. And you look at Ngezi now, the way they've transformed. They've learned what in their last 4 games. They're now in 4th position. You look at Tinotenda Murasranwa, he came from the under-19s. You look at Leslie Kastigu, he came from the under-19s as well. You look at Elson Mweha, he came from the under-19s, Tendai Matindife. They've got a whole host of players that have come from the under-19 side. But I do concur with what Philip there just said. It's not just about the under-19s. We have to go further down. It has to start from that 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid.
Because Philip, what I notice is there's no clear path. Like for me, obviously, because I'm very vocal on social media, you'll get a lot of youngsters that inbox you. I'm from this certain town. I play football. I want to play football. It seems in Zimbabwe there's no clear path where you can tell a child who's in Mutoko, or you can tell a child who's in Plumtree, you can tell a child who's in Wange to say, what is the path? How do you get to a club? Is there an academy near you? What's the progression for these youngsters in Zimbabwe?
This is where the underdevelopment has captured the football. See, when we talk of a ZIFA should have been so proactive in terms of growing the game in rural areas, in different places of interest. But that hasn't happened. The focus is on the big clubs. Or you know how football has been captured in Zimbabwe. I don't want to go into that politics because it's toxic and it's so damaging. It's something that makes me feel hurt. And I always tell people our football has got to change. We have to go outside, our normal cities, our normal towns, and try and give everybody else a platform and an opportunity. I've been doing a lot of work in Kwekwe. I've been doing a lot of work countrywide. I've been in Marondera. I've been doing a lot of work in Alex Sports Club. I've got a lot of young kids coming as far as Karoi. So we are well connected with these youngsters that you're talking about, who are quite keen to say, where can I get a chance to try and play?
Where can I get a chance to play? We obviously were talking about the Council of Women's Soccer League in this segment, also going into junior development as well. And in the next segment, we are going to go beyond Zimbabwe.
Do you need a website? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Let us craft your website using modern website design trends. Let your audience access your website from all devices for improved user experience. We'll help you grow your revenue by helping you generate more leads and sales through fully optimizing your website. Visit our website today and request for a quote. We'll call you back.
Welcome back to Football Digest, and we're now focusing on Zimbabweans outside that are playing outside Zimbabwean borders. And we start with South Africa, where the Kaizer Chiefs are playing a 1-0 draw with Zulu in the MTN 8 Challenge. And Kamabile didn't play in that game, still sidelined by injury. And Francis, when we look at what's happening with Kama, for example, we've seen an era where Kaizer Chiefs had a lot of Zimbabwean players. At one time, they had Thomas Sheshe, Tinashe Ngomasha, Jaimu Jambo, Willard Katsande in the same team. And now, when it's off-season, you don't see a lot of Zimbabweans crossing over to South Africa. Is that a reflection of the standard of our players?
Definitely it should be, because one point in time, as you rightly pointed, there was Jaimu, Thomas, Tinashe, Willard, all of them making the grade at Kaizer Chiefs, but right now it's just Kama. Why don't we have other players making it into such a big side? I think it's just a reflection of the quality of players that are being produced in our top flight, or maybe togona kutaura kuti my agents edu has kunyatso market our players out there. I don't know, but definitely we should be having at least 2-3 players from Zimbabwe making it into Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, into those top clubs that could be springboard for them to be able to make it into Europe.
Is it harder if you're a foreigner for you to make the grade? Because we've seen lately that Zimbabwean players are not going really to the big teams like he's saying. How is it when you look at a football and the integration of players? How easy is it for a player to come from Zimbabwe and make an impact, let's say, in South Africa?
Well, historically, Kaizer Chiefs have been one of the biggest clubs that scouts players from Zimbabwe, not because of the likes of Kama or all these other names that we've mentioned, but if you look at the days of Majuta Mpofu, all these are the big names. They've always had
Shugamguyo,
Epson Shugamguyo. They've always had a very, very soft spot. They like Zimbabweans most. But what we notice of late is that the quality of coaching in Zimbabwe has dropped. It's gone down. In terms of junior development, we're not talking of what's happening at the Premiership level. What's happening at the Premiership level is a reflection of what is happening at the lowest level. So what makes one a good player to go and play in South Africa? We competitively, our junior setups or our junior leagues are non-existent. That's one thing that you have to notice and agree with. They are non-existent. When I say they're non-existent, where have you seen a fixture of Cape United under 16s versus Dynamo's under 16s? That's the fixture for top flight professional football. And that's where the focus should have been with these clubs, but it's not there. FC Platinum under 19s, or where are they playing? They're playing in is it Division 1 or something like that. But what about the under 16s? Where are they playing? So that kind of grassroots development is non-existent.
But are we then, like when you talk about, I agree to what you're saying, that the development is not where it should be. But Francis, also, is it not too much focus on results? Because I'll give an example of the Marvelous Nakamba tournament. Here's a good initiative. Get youngsters. But clubs are so focused on winning. They send overage players.
Yeah, I think it's a major area of concern. I remember once meeting Mark Duvillard at Standard Chartered Sports Club, and he highlighted the fact that it's important to impart the correct principles while these kids are 10, 11, 12, 13. It's not about winning. Yes, you've been invited to the Marvelous Nakamba tournament. It's about showcasing the type of football that will be imparted by the junior coaches. Duvillard alluded to the fact that as 5-0, as long as Trikurtamba Borak Mashure, we should play the way that we want to play. So it's very, very important.
That what if you are the coach? You have that vision to say, it's okay, we can take time. The same vision that Benjamin Marwari had in Ngezi didn't see fruition. You are a coach, you're going to the Marvelous Nakamba tournament, you're saying, okay, it's our first time we want this players to get a platform. But meanwhile, there's an administration, there are leaders at your club that are saying, Zoka, Ublawa, we need this title.
It's a totally wrong mentality.
It's a different.
They shouldn't be giving their coaches such pressure. It should be about the boys going out enjoying themselves. Yes, Mukawi now it's a bonus, but ultimately it shouldn't be a win at all costs kind of a situation that's created by the clubs.
You see, if you look at even the winners of the Marvelous Makamba tournament, is it Majesa from Tare? Yeah, but when you look at that kind of achievement, and no disrespect to their success, but when you say we won at the Marvelous Nakamba tournament, in terms of strategic development of football, where does that fit in? You know, in terms of the holistic picture, where do we want to go after winning the Marvelous Nakamba tournament? This is what is missing.
Where are we playing consistently?
Exactly. This is where the missing the missing link is. Junior grassroots football development are not meant for those that are trying to claim titles, but titles always come along for those that have prepared well. You know, that's how it works. But in this kind of context, what we have in Zimbabwe is a directionless agenda, because the motherboard is ZIFA is failing to lead. You know, they're failing to lead how football works at the lowest level. They're failing. They're all focused with the national teams. When you hear the name ZIFA, it's a national team. Under 17, under 20, under 21, senior national team. That's when you hear ZIFA. You don't hear ZIFA as in junior grassroots development. You don't hear about them. Where are they?
Yeah, I guess it's a matter that needs to be addressed in terms of the attention also being shifted away from the senior national sides. Look at what South Africa did in their AFCON campaign, where we were placed together with them. They saw kuti kushanda. Yes, all the players are repo, but it's not working. Hugo Bruce came in, injected young blood, and they started getting the results. So sometimes we need to shift the attention. We should have a clear pathway of having a player starting from the under-17s, graduating to the under-20s, under-23s, and then the senior sides. At the present moment, we have players just sprouting wako senior level, but ukamvunza utokambotamba under-17 ere.
At 28, he's getting a national cap at 28.
And
this is criminal.
Level is, you look at COSAFA Cup when we're still playing, you've got other countries using it as the platform for the development players.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, we are taking our whole. I remember COSAFA, the one that we last won in Polokwane. You had, foreign-based players or people like him and Timo Kadebe, they're coming from Europe to play in COSAFA. Meanwhile, we're playing against teams that are bringing development sides, and then we win and we're like, yeah, we're the best in COSAFA.
I think in terms of development, this is where ZIFA has failed to articulate the kind of projections that take place in professional football development. If you have youngsters playing, let's say in Europe, he's 17, he's 21. If he wants to play for Zimbabwe, it's an opportunity for Zimbabwe to engage him even through COSAFA and mix. Let's bring the football mix first. What has happened of late is that the local football has taken an advantage through football capture, where they will place their players in the national team because it's syndicated. It's all syndicated. Look at this recent AFCON squad. You'll have an agent having about 15 players, one agent. You see, that's football capture. And
you're also having like the national team being a trial platform, because any name that someone says, oh, there's this youngster in Europe who's doing well, they're put straight into the national team.
No, it doesn't happen that way. I'm the first to introduce that program.
It's happened. It's happened. For example, we don't give names, but we have certain individuals known in football who then start posting, there's a player like this there, there's a player like this there. And then we've had cases where, for example, you've had players that come and then they're playing in the national team, but they haven't been tested anyway. We even had a player who would come from America, going for a trip in Guinea, was on the bench, wasn't tried, wasn't there the next game. What's happening?
Right. I've got to clarify a lot of issues there. The program that I started with Nelson Matongori in 2009. He was the technical director. Nelson Matongori instructed me to start scouting and coaching youngsters in Europe because he said Zimbabwean football is going down. But we can't just sit idle and watch. I started scouting for youngsters. I started with Tendai Darigwa in 2009. 10. Tendai Darigwa was 16 then. He was playing for Chesterfield. He was released by Nottingham Forest. And Tendai Darigwa agreed to play for the Zimbabwe national team. The trouble was with Zifa when one of the CEOs demanded $5,000 from Tendai Darigwa. Now that's when the problem started. There was a lot of suspicion from these youngsters in Europe. They said, how can I pay to play for my country? Yeah. Now I said to them, look, you are creating a big conflict with these youngsters. You have to understand that their passion to play for the country, long term, it will help the country as well. It's not just that they want to disadvantage the local kids. So in 2011, I was asked to bring in, what's his name? He was playing for Charlton.
Not Macaulay.
Bradley
Pritchard.
Bradley Pritchard agreed to come. He agreed to come, financed his flights, everything. In camp, there was a sabotage again. Don't pass the ball to him. So all these things are heaping pressure on them. They go and talk to each other about that, such things. 2013-14, I was here. I was asked by the then technical director, Jongwe, to bring in the youngsters to go and play in Morocco. I brought in Makal Boni, I brought in David Moyo, I brought in Mnyara Zimbanje, I brought in...
But that's not the problem that we're talking about. The problem we're talking about is, for example, right now, we've got Alec Mudimu in the national team.
Yeah.
What league does he play in? Because what we're saying is, if a player is playing in Zimbabwe, it's very difficult for them to get in the national team, right? But for any player in Europe, whatever league they're in, whether it's third tier, fourth tier, second tier, they just come in, they're given a national team jersey, they're playing. Because now there are a lot of agents that are now saying, we're in Europe, we've got this player. They start posting and making noise about them on social media.
But
in some cases, Yvonne, I feel as though some of the second tier or third tier leagues in Europe might actually be of a better standard than our very own Premier Soccer League.
But it's an assumption. What I'm saying is, does it guarantee if I move now and I start staying in Europe, I have a child there, they have a better chance of playing in our national team without being tried than a player who's in the Premier League now?
I think it now boils down.
We don't have that progression where they come in their seed.
I think it now boils down to some structural flaws in terms of how we structure the national team, because surely there should be a performance analyst that's scouting for each and every player that's playing in the second tier, third tier, the championship, the Premier League. That is what is supposed to determine which kind of a player is going to be called into the national team. Because we also need to consider the fact that the national team coach, anengane style of play yake, it's not necessarily about the standard, but it also has to do with the kind of a player that the coach wants. So it has to be about the coach.
Can I pose a question to you? I know I'm talking about one player, but it's an example. Do you think that if Alec Mlimu played in Zimbabwe in one of the teams, he would have got the Zimbabwe team jersey and gone to Africa?
That's an assumption now, because Alec Mudimu, the development that he went through while he was abroad is different from the development that he would have gone through while he was back in Zimbabwe.
But is it not all based on assumption? Because my question is on the fact that, are we not supposed to have a structure in which, yes, I can't expect Zemura to come and have trials. you can't expect some of these players that are at the top level to come and have trials. But I'm saying that these small little leagues where somebody's coming from, where automatically they get into the national team. Now all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, are there deals happening? How is this person?
Which is why I said there are structural flaws. I think as a country we need scouts that thoroughly assess some of these players before they are called up for the national team.
The issue of Alec Mdimo is well documented. I'll give you a very good maybe response to that. And Alec Mdimo was playing in I think conference level. That's where he was playing. Now I'll give you also a good reflection on that. Jordan Zemura was released by Charlton. Yeah, he was released in the academy, and when he was released by Charlton, he went to Bournemouth. At that time, the transition from being released by Charlton going to Bournemouth, we referred Jordan Zemura to the national teams, the under-17s. They refused him. Now, Alec Mdimo is not part of the system that we scouted players for in Europe. It's through an organization that is online that has also brought in players like Kundai Benyu from the same levels.
The example I'm giving is you are out there in the context of English football. When he came into the national team, what tier was he in?
He was in the fifth tier.
Exactly. If you're fifth tier, what then makes you automatically come and be in the heart of the defense of a national team without there being a transition? Just because you're coming from out there, you've got a better chance.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. That's why I'm trying to explain in detail. The issue of Alec Mdimo is an issue that even everybody else outside Zimbabwe questions. I mean, I question that as well, because I said to people, look, Alec Mdimo came from conference level. He got the opportunity to play in COSAFA. That's where he kept going. But there are players who have played much higher than Alec Mdimo in Europe, who are being denied the opportunity. What's special about Alec Mdimo? Now, then you understand that Alec Mdimo, the people who maybe are behind him as managers now, have influence in the national team.
But how would you have rated Alec Mdimo's performance in the national team? What are we saying about how he performed after being called up to the national team?
Been convinced.
He hasn't been convincing, to be honest. He hasn't been convincing. But this is what I'm saying. It's the people now who saw the niche market in Europe.
For me, if I compare with some of the defenders that we had in Zimbabwe, there are many names I could have said this player will probably provide. Why we use it's nothing personal. We're just using an example of one.
Yeah, it's
player.
A good example.
There are a lot of players that have come into the fold. I gave that example of the player who came, didn't play a game, never came back again. So you ask yourself, okay, he came, he traveled to Guinea, he didn't play, he never came again. What's happening?
It's the people who are bringing these players into the national team. It's not the structure. Like, for instance, I'll give you a good example. When I was given the opportunity by Nelson Matongore to scout for players in Europe, I didn't just do it alone. I had people like Charlie White, the late Charlie White, one of the brainchild of this project of bringing youngsters in Europe to play for Zimbabwe. I had Ndabanyati, the former agent of Marvelous Nakamba. So we had technical guys who are out there. So we would relate to each other. Oh, there's a youngster here, there's a youngster here. So we are convinced, because we are all coaches, we are also working at that level. This is how we scouted these players to come. Now,
I think it's the scouting system that needs to improve.
And now what is happening
the other day on one of the Zim SoccerNet shows, In Touch with a Legend, we had Mike Timwanjira on the show, highlighting the fact that he played 7.5 years in the top tier of the Romanian top flight. He was playing Europa League, but then
nobody saw him.
He was only called once.
Exactly.
Costa Namoinesu came at what age? He had been overlooked for all this time. So it's a discussion that we can continue to have on social media. Obviously, we can spend the whole day talking about what's happening with the scouting system in Zimbabwe. But briefly, before we go, I have to mention the fact that some of the Zimbabweans that were playing in Europe, Jordan Zemura, almost got a penalty for Bournemouth. Very unlucky not to get a penalty, as his team played a nil-all draw with Brentford in the English Premier League. In Spain, Real Mallorca playing a goalless. Real Mallorca were beaten by Barcelona 1-0, but Tino Kadewere unfortunately not play, still injured. Marvelous Nakamba, a new substitute again as Aston Villa drew with Leeds. We were planning to go deep into those games and all those players, but guys, we then went into the scouting. It's something that I think it's a discussion you can continue on social media about the integration of players in Europe in the Zimbabwean national team compared to the players that play in the local league. Welcome to the last segment of Football Digest, and we're talking about the Chan draw, which was conducted, but Zimbabwe not in the draw. And Francis, it's sad, but it's life.
Sadly, tatota majeze kuhenga, takutongoita majeze kuhenga muno studio. No national football no national team football to talk about. Unfortunately, the Chan draw conducted. This would have been a platform for maybe some of our locally based players, kuti Nyamutsamba or Chan, a tournament set aside for local based players. Many people have been scouted at such an event, but unfortunately, as Zimbabwe are losing out. Hopefully, in the near future, FIFA, the government, etc., they're going to come together and come up with a solution that may lead to our readmission by FIFA.
How much of an impact does it make on a player when you are absent from the international scene, especially when we talk about transfers?
First and foremost, top-flight professional football is hinged on international football, where you play as a country. So if you don't have that, then you stand very big disadvantage against those that have that kind of quality. I mean, Zimbabwe at the moment, we are ranked 120 plus in world football. And on top of that, you don't play international games. So what is that? That's mediocre. It's a mediocre league, it's a mediocre national team. So the players become, the quantity of average and below average players. That's what is happening.
They become unsellable.
And who wants a player like that? Your nation is ranked 125 plus. You're not on the international scene. Yeah, your league is substandard.
You talked there about rankings. Obviously, they're hinged on points accumulated on the number of matches that you then play. So Zimbabwe definitely missing out. But not missing out is social media. Francis, for the longest time, Zimbabwean fans weren't using, Zimbabwean clubs weren't using social media. But now all of a sudden, we're now seeing a lot of conversations happening on social media. I will start with this one. This one says, it's a tweet by Caps United FC. It says, "Ukona wakagara pavarume 3 or 4 vasingataure nezvaWilliam Manondo teaser vanokufurira zvakaipa vanhu ivavo." I think this is referring to the fact that despite the fact that he's playing at Caps United, relegation threatened, but he's the top goal scorer in the league.
Top goal scorer with 15 goals has been really impressive. I am hoping that he'll be able to get to the 20 goal mark, because it's been years since we last had reaching the 20 goal mark. Maroto was the last after me. But I think it says a lot about I don't know whether it's the quality of coaching. I don't know whether it's the number of chances being created.
What does it say to you, Philip? If you are, let's say you don't watch Zimbabwean football, and then you look at the goal scorers chart. There's a guy with 15, then others are like 11. The rest are below 10. What does it say about the league?
It tells you one thing. That league is being run by coaches who are defensive minded. They're just thinking, let's grind the result 1-0 or I'm safe. So it's a result oriented league. It's not a league that is run on the basis of offensive play. If you talk of offensive play, you're saying my team is an attacking team. I've never seen a single team in Zimbabwe that says we're an attacking team. I've watched a lot of their games. They're all defense minded. You fight the goalkeeper against the ball.
Does that not happen because maybe we don't have the quality strikers? We don't have the quality attacking.
A striker is going to be coached and prepared. If you're not coaching a player because he's 24, he's playing for Ngezi Platinum, or he's playing for Dynamos, that has got to be embedded in the junior national grassroots levels where offensive play. Take for instance Holland. You look at a typical Dutch player. I am Robin at 6'7", he was doing what he was doing at 38. Then it tells you it's a culture.
So on that note, like as a journalist, you have access to trainings, and you see how are you going to score in a game if you're training you're blunt? Because that's what I see. I see a lot of blunt strikers, blunt attacking midfielders who are not even training quite.
It's like I'm saying, it's embedded. Football is embedded. The way you start is the way you end. So if you started blunt, you're not gonna have that mindset or instinct to say this is a typical scoring opportunity or this is a typical midfield creative play. You don't have that because you're not coached that. I'm introducing futsal in this country. With futsal, we tell a kid, or we try to say to a kid, the first thing that you have to have the relationship is with the ball. You have the relationship with the ball, both feet. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, chop, drag, chop, step over, leg over. Yeah, these are the dynamics that make up, offensive play in terms of creativity, in terms of the dribbling, in terms of, that confidence to say, against 3 defenders, I'll score a goal, I'll beat them all. So this is what is missing in this local
But we keep going back to Zifa and saying, how thorough are we in, or even do people even get accredited for these academies? Because I can just wake up in the morning, say, in Zimbabwe grounds, I start my academy and I start teaching kids. But are we really thorough about the people that are starting with these young kids? Why I ask that question is because you will find national team, you will find in club football, top teams, basics, basics. In our league right now.
Yeah. Zifa is the problem. Zifa is the problem. Why I say so? Tell me one thing that Zifa is projected to the nation and say, this is our football philosophy in terms of where we want to go, in terms of how we want to achieve it. Not even a single day on earth.
What are long-term plans?
Not even a single day on earth. So how then do you say, as a nation, our players should play for Kaizer Chiefs in South Africa? When the vision of the country is blurred, it's not even there. Zifa is the problem. They don't have a 5-year development plan. What do they want to do in 5 years?
But Zifa, they know they're Caps United or Dynamos.
No.
Or Kuti nema under 10 or under 12.
Yes, it's Zifa. It's Zifa.
But I feel as though at times we put all the burden on Zifa in terms of saying Kuti ndwari kufana kuita zvese. But as the Philip Zulu Football Club in the Premier League, in your right mind, surely you would know that to produce quality players that will be playing for your first team, you have to develop them from a very tender age. Where does Zifa come into that?
Now Zifa is the controlling body, is the controlling association of all football activities. Now, you bring templates that go hand in hand with licensing, like Yvonne said. So, the Premiership clubs, the first policy should be grassroots football development, and the Zifa should articulate that in full. Any club that goes into the Premiership should have a minimum of under 12, under 14, under 16. That's the academy. Both girls and boys. That's the policy. You can't change it. Yeah? But Zifa, what do? They just sit back, waiting for the under 17 national team. Then they run around to those academies that you're talking about because they're all syndicated to the football capture.
Because the reason why Francis was asking about if we have academies that are teaching the right skills. Let's give an example of Knowledge Msona. He came straight from Division 1, went to South Africa. And if you trace some of the players that came from his academy aces, you can see, when you watch those players play, whether it's in the league, it's those that are abroad, you can tell the sort of grooming that they had. And then you've got all these academies that are just sprouting. And the reason I ask that is because you can't sit week in, week out in the Premier League and watch the level of football that we have, where basics are not done. You and I, we also have an advantage. Like he's into football, he's into scouting. But even us as journalists, we've gone through level 1, level 2 of coaching. So we even understand the basics of what a coach is supposed to be impacting on a player. And sometimes you look at it from a coaching eye and say, is this being impacted? Why are we having this quality of a player at a so-called top team in the league?
Yeah, I do agree with you when it comes to the planning side of things. Because I wonder, do we even have a strategic plan? Because that's where everything starts. You look at Germany when they won the World Cup. It was a deliberate plan that had been put in place, which they just carried through, having national academies, having clubs feeding into those provincial teams that they had, and then coming with a solid under 17, under 20 side. Eventually, it did tell when they managed to win the World Cup. So I think it's all about having a solid strategic plan that will have key performance indicators. And
also, like you're saying, in the PSL also, don't you think they've got a part in terms of, we were talking about the teams that have been promoted. Mm-hmm. What are we also putting junior development and all its needs in the requirement for someone to move from Division 1 to the top flight? Or we are just saying, you've been promoted, come. There are other things that we're focusing more. We see more even focused on homologation of stadiums more than other aspects that a club should have.
Of course, I had an opportunity to watch Simba Bora and Golden Eagles. and I had a chance to talk to Barry Manandi. They have a good understanding of what needs to be done, at this level of our football. They have the under 12s, they have the under 14s, they have the under 16s. Now, you are talking to a sound guy. This is a sound guy.
But that's personal initiative versus structure.
But look, if a guy comes up with such an understanding, and then there's the national federation that is aloof, then what we do? Do we say that guy is somewhere in the wilderness or what? We have to acknowledge him. Those that are in the wilderness, that are aloof, like the national federation, we've got to keep telling them that they are asleep. They're not doing any good to us. The problem is individuals that want to take football to the next level in Zimbabwe are there, but they are not getting that support, from the national federation and the corporate world as well. It's a little bit the other side of where football is difficult with the corporate world.
So I know we delved deep into development, but we were talking about what's happening on social media, and I have to look at this tweet by Zim Celeb's official, which says, "Congratulations to Marvelous Nakamba on his new whip. He just added a Ferrari on top of his 2 Lamborghinis." It's also nice and refreshing to see the other side of players, that not just the action. I feel it's deserved.
Yeah, he does deserve it.
You obviously have worked hard to get there.
Definitely, I think it should serve as an inspiration to the 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old out there, that if you work hard and you make it, you'll live a very comfortable life. Football pays, especially when you're playing for an English Premiership club.
And then we move on to a tweet by Mets Bami, which reads, "Nyasha Chazikwa requested that we order a bale of assorted sportswear and equipment for resale. Yesterday, Engineer Mkoyi drove from Gezi to Harare and revealed the amount of $300. We committed $250 to the bale, and $50 was commuted to his groceries for his upkeep." This is in relation to stories about Nyasha Chazika, that life is not really rosy for him. So now they've given him something, a start.
Good to see the, I could say, kind side of the fans. It's not just about reading about these stories and then vanotanga kutaura aiwa hanga sina urongeka munhu akambotamba super sport, but here is a fan who comes and says, "No, Nyasha, I've heard about your plight. How can I help you out?" Nyasha speaks about what he may want, and then the fan obliging, and it's good to see. It's good to see such kind people still existing in society.
And we have to talk about the story before we go. We have to talk about the story, obviously, Manchester United and Manchester City, half a dozen. But some people choose to see that game differently. One such person is Cape United legend Anus Munjira, who wrote on his socials, "So, Man United lost the first half to Man City and then won the second half. So basically the match was 1-1, meaning 1 win apiece. Man United akazongodywa hayo pa goal aggregate, but the match was 1-1. What a thriller that game was. But I mean, if you're on the receiving end and you're Manchester United, it was not a good game, especially the first half.
Well, look, there's one thing that we have to accept. Manchester City, they have a very, very, very good program for attracting top talents in the world. Manchester United, they've lost that glitter. Now it's in Manchester, it's at Etihad. They have, and the situation there is so unbelievable. Any kid would want to go and play for Man City than Man United. Any day, any hour.
And I'm convinced now more than ever that Manchester City will win the Champions League this season.
Because that's been the defense for Man United supporters, to say, I mean, can we say they're stuck in the past? Because it's the same situation in Zimbabwe when you get fans from Highlanders, from Caps, from Dynamos. It's very difficult for a person to then acknowledge and say, but FC Platinum do it good. You understand? They always have excuses as to why. And when it comes to Man City, the defense is always but
yeah. Look,
it was clear. The golfing class is just.
I want to give you a good example. I have a good opportunity in England where I take most of my boys to Manchester City, in their development programs. You will find that a A typical Manchester City academy player can play for a club like Bournemouth. You know, somebody who is well developed at academy level in Manchester City can play for a Premiership club. Then it tells you the big difference that all these clubs have. It tells you a big difference. You see the quality of, the coaches that work in the Manchester City academy, Manchester City youth teams. It's unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. It's unbelievable.
Some say money can buy you success. I don't know. I'm a Newcastle.
So Man United, they're
money.
in regression. Man United, they're in regression. I mean, it's a fact. You look at the way they were defending. That's criminal. You see, Haaland, he turned 360 degrees at the edge of the box. I said, that's criminal defending. That's criminal.
But it's also
that's criminal.
But also great buy. Haaland has just been
no, he's a top talent, no doubt about it. He's a top talent. But when you're defending, whether it's a top talent or average talent, the basics of defending are the same. Edge of the box, nobody turns 360 degrees. Nobody turns.
Meanwhile, some of us Newcastle supporters will just sit there admiring, saying, we used to say, okay, fine, we can't buy this player. Now we have the money.
But you have Saint Maxime. What a player! What a player! You have Saint Maxime.
Francis, which team do you support in England?
Manchester United.
On that note, we say goodbye. See you next week. We've got a Man United supporter. I understand why you were okay. We'll give you reprieve because if you go deep, maybe we'll take you back to that moment and you'll be sad. Until next time, join us again on Football Digest. My name is Yvonne Mangwin.